I would like to know from all of you in TikTok land how you spent your Saturday. Because I spent my Saturday watching MotoGP. We had Q1, Q2, and a sprint race. There was a lot going on. First up, let's talk about qualifying. And in Q1, we had a few big names. We had Fabio Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez, Pedro Acosta, and hometown hero for the Portuguese Grand Prix, Miguel Oliveira. But we all know by now, unless you're brand new to the channel, and thank you for following, that unless you are the top 2 fastest in Q1, you don't get to go through to Q2 and fight for pole position. Now, right away, Gresini, Ducati, Alex Marquez was super fast. It looked like he was going to be untouchable, put the top time into the session. He's going through to Q2, but who would join him? Well, the answer came pretty quickly, no pun intended, because it was the rookie wonder boy, Pedro Acosta. So let's keep track. It's been 2 weeks since he's been a MotoGP rider. Week 1, he goes straight through to Q2. Week 2, he goes to Q1, but then advances to Q2 anyway. You can't stop this kid. And let's not forget, more time on the bike for him means more experience, which I think really means trouble for everyone else on the grid. When this kid gets really, really comfortable, he's going to win a lot of races. But that's the future. Let's talk about the now, because we moved to Q2 where the times got pretty stinking fast. Not as fast as last year, and I think most of that has to do with track conditions, but we saw some pretty quick times. And as expected, it was a red factory Ducati taking pole position, but not in the form of reigning world champion Pecco Bagnaia. It was his teammate, Enea Bastianini. Enea has a lot to prove after a very lackluster 2023 season. He needs to be beating Jorge Martin in qualifying, sprints, and main races all the time to secure his spot within that factory team. Getting pole position, kind of helps the argument. Now, nipping at his heels taking second was Maverick Viñales, who's looked really strong this week on that Aprilia, despite losing almost 5 pounds due to a flu bug, basically. Now it was Jorge Martin grabbing that last spot on the front row in 3rd place. Right behind him, Pecco Bagnaia in 4th and Jack Miller in 5th. Which is trouble for everyone else because Jack is a super fast starter and he will be in the mix in the early laps, which may throw a spanner in the works for some of these other Ducatis. Further down the field, we have Marco Bezzecchi qualifying 6th, getting to know that 2023 Ducati a little bit better, figuring it out. Not a bad qualifying on that 2nd row. Behind him, Pedro Acosta, who had just come through Q1, slots himself into 7th. Now, Marc Marquez and Brad Binder had very early crashes in the session, which kind of derailed any hope that they were going to be running toward the front. They just had to put in a lap. Marquez starts 8th, Fabio Quartararo starts 9th, Brad Binder starts 10th. But I expected the Gresini and the KTM to move forward during the race, and it happened for one of them. Because just like last year, the circuit at Portimão caught a few riders out in the sprint, and we saw Brad Binder go down, Johan Zarco, Fabio Di Giannantonio, and Alex Rins all DNF from the race. And as we expected, Jack Miller got a great start, but true to form, he just kind of slipped back. He couldn't hold it up at the front with the fastest guys. But Marc Marquez could, because he came storming through from that 8th place grid position, and he was fighting for the podium pretty early on. Now, Enea Bastianini got off the line terribly. Pecco Bagnaia kind of beat him up. Jack Miller kind of beat him up. Viñales kind of beat him up. And he fell back quite a ways. Now, you would think it would be Jorge Martin that really took advantage of all that, but at the end of the day, it was Maverick Viñales who had the real speed in this sprint race. And again, that is despite being sick all weekend long. Like, is this a Michael Jordan flu game? I don't know, maybe it is. Viñales holds off the rest of the field, winning the race, and Marc Marquez makes a master lunge on Jorge Martin in the last lap to claim 2nd. Martin has to settle for 3rd. And all of that was just Saturday. But before I jump into everything that happened on Sunday, please hit like, follow, share, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP goodness that you can handle. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, this new format is really, really hectic. Not only do we have sprints on Saturday, we have Moto E running on Saturday and Sunday, Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP running main Grand Prix on Sunday. It's a very, very packed schedule. And a quick shout out to American Moto2 rider Joe Roberts, who gets 2nd in the Moto2 race in Portugal. He loves this track. He had a good finish the first week. He had a great finish today. Are we thinking he might be ready for a move up just 2 weeks into the season? Am I getting ahead of myself? Yeah, probably, but I do want to talk about that in another video. Okay, time to focus. MotoGP on Sunday, the main event. What were we really expecting? I think a lot of us were expecting Maverick Viñales to be running at the front maybe yet again. He got a great start, and if Maverick starts well, he usually finishes very, very well. But it looked like Jorge Martin learned a little something from the sprint, put that to use in the main Grand Prix, and never really saw a challenge to that top spot all day long. Don't get me wrong, Maverick kept him very honest, staying within a couple tenths, half a second of him most of the race, making sure that any mistake Jorge made, Maverick was going to capitalize. And we knew a red Ducati was going to be fighting for the podium. Maybe both red Ducatis were. But Pecco got roughed up a little bit in the early laps on this one, and Enea Bastianini took the race to the front. Okay, not all the way to the front. He was running around in third most of the races, but you know what I mean. And it was a great day for the KTMs. Brad Binder had a much better start, Jack Miller had a great start, and Pedro Acosta again started chewing up the field, knocking off riders left and right. After picking off Binder and Jack Miller, he takes on Marquez and passes Pecco Bagnaia late in the race. Who says MotoGP has no overtakes? Come on, open your eyes, folks. But the most interesting thing to me was that once Acosta passed Bagnaia, he put him in the dust. He put him in the rearview mirror. Gapped him immediately. And Pecco had no chance to retaliate because he had to worry about Marc Marquez, who was now breathing down his neck. And with about 3 laps to go, Marc Marquez makes a very aggressive overtake, runs a little bit wide. Pecco tries to go back underneath. The two come together, and into the gravel trap they go. Did I just say gravel? Gravel trap they go. So it was settled at the front, right? Nope, wrong, because as Maverick Viñales began the last lap of the race, the gearbox decided not to go with him. He loses power, has to run off the track in turn 1, and for good measure, the bike spit him straight up in the air for all of his troubles. Which means we had Jorge Martin winning the race, Enea Bastianini getting a much-needed second for his campaign to keep his job, and rookie wonderboy Pedro Acosta getting on the podium in only his second MotoGP race. I can already hear the critics, yeah, well, if it wasn't for Maverick not feeling it, well, he didn't finish the race. You have to finish the race to be on the podium. He didn't. You have to stay on the bike in order to finish, right? That's how racing works. So I'm not going to look at the asterisks. There's no asterisks. He's on the podium in his second race ever. Now, I hate to say I told you so. I said this was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen this fast. But now what? We have to expect wins out of him. That's what he's making us do this. It's not us, it's him. Further back, 2 more KTMs. Brad Binder finishes 4th, Jack Miller finishes 5th, which means 3 KTMs were in the top 5. And finally, Trackhouse Racing's Miguel Oliveira, hometown Portuguese hero, comes in at 9th, getting that top 10 that he wanted to give to the fans, and then gave them a little extra by throwing his gloves into the crowd.